Hello, friends. 2026 episode, not sure. I should always check before I start, but I've started. I'm just going to keep this season going. I don't know how the season things work. This is still season 2. Why not span across a couple of years? Whatever the rules are. Welcome to the Terribly Honest with David Tenson podcast I record while I walk. A listener the other day was like, it's amazing how you just like good morning to someone and you keep going with a conversation. Trained to be mindlessly friendly in some ways. Good start to the year, in that the year started and we're all still alive and kicking. We have changes around our house with my eldest moving out this month, at the end of this month, and going to miss her. She's 21, but it is time for her to go. Good for everyone, good for her. Excited about this next season and stage in her life. If you've been listening for a while, you may know I was married and moved out at 19, and so we always have these moments with my daughter where she'll say, oh, this is hard, or I don't know how to do this, or something will happen, and we're like, we'd already been living, for 2 years on our own as primary house renters, etc. For 2 years, you're going to be okay. You are going to be okay. So anyway, she's excited about moving in with some friends and moving closer to things that she's engaged with. So we're stoked for her. Nat is going to start a master's in social work practice at the same uni that I'm at, University of Sunshine Coast. And so that'll be exciting. And our eldest is finishing her last year there. I think I mentioned our eldest boy. He graduated year 12. He's going to start a plumbing apprenticeship. So we'll have one left in school. Real change of season, definitively. My book last year, Decenter Everything, I talk about this post-parenting season. And with one moving out and one starting an apprenticeship after graduating year 12, it definitely feels like that season is alive and we're into it. My 15-year-old and I, he loves weightlifting and stuff, so we both go to this powerlifting gym, and he loves it and he outlifts me quite a lot. So there's this definite sense of like the little kids are gone, they're done. This is definitely a household of young adults, and to be honest, there's been some grief with that, like last year or early this year, and journaling and actually getting some acupuncture. A whole lot of unprocessed emotions and things came up, and in the midst of that was quite a lot of grief, and in some of that was grief that my daughter was moving out, grief that that season of our kids being children is over. And I mean, thank God, it is tough, and we did it for 20 years. But young kids are such beautiful treasures, and it's hard and demanding, and necessary some of the dying to self is in that season. So much that's enjoyed, and some people say, treasure it while it's there, it'll be gone quickly. I don't think it's gone quickly, but I think because we did it for 20 years across 3 kids, we had a 6-year gap between the eldest and the youngest. But for me, I felt it when it was over, most definitely. Happy for the break. Love the season that they're in now as young adults as well. Different laughs, different conversations, but definitely moving into eldering. And feeling that, and this is what happens when often I'll write a book And part of that book will be anticipatory. It'll be me thinking ahead. Maybe there's some anxiety there. I don't know. Planning ahead, thinking ahead and going, okay, what is this next season? What's this next thing look like? I've actually gone back to some of the poems that I wrote in the wrestle, actually, and without knowing it, 5 or 6 years later, I'm reading these poems, thinking, wow, that is definitely me right now. And I don't know why I wrote it back then. I can't remember, but there's a sense that sometimes you write to your future self. So I wanted to talk about writing. I have come across this podcast which I have been binging over the last few weeks, and it's called How I Write. And the producer and interviewer, I think his name's David Perell, interviews like some really top line authors and writers from across the world, and he does a fantastic interview, and these are fiction writers, non-fiction writers, essayists. He even does quite a lot around, he's confessed he's a Christian. He's done an interview with the Bible Project before, and some scholars who will work around some of the language of the Bible as well. That's sort of a side note, but on the whole, just a great interviewer. And that's a lot of them are on video too now. How I Write. He interviews some of the great novelists, essayists, and authors today. He gets some A-class people on there. I just listened to one where he interviewed Dean Koontz, who wrote, he's written like 120 books and amassed, $200 million worth of fortune. And anyway, high level people. And anyway, it's been inspiring because we're moving through what will be my 8th book in How to Pray a Blessing. Nat and I got away for a couple of days to grab a big chunk of uninterrupted intentional time for writing. We did that, which was fantastic. And I think I'm at around 28,000 words now, which is roughly going to be about the size of the book. It's not going to be a massive, excessive book, but I'm really happy with the structure. So I'm just going to go over this draft a number of times. Some chapters I'm super stoked with. Some chapters I know that I'm going to have to dig deeper into, or there's going to be some things that I find I need to unpack a little more. But in the How I Write podcast, you just hear about the different approaches that full-time writers have to their craft, and some are very much like, I get up, I make a coffee, I go down to my office. A lot of them work from home, and I basically put in 4 hours of writing. I don't check my emails beforehand. I don't talk to anyone. I don't read anything. From 6 till 10 a.m. I'm just writing. I'm writing, and after that, day's open. Now, by then, somebody's sat down and written for roughly 4 hours. It's half an average work day, he says, and then I'll do planning, get on with my day, do things. But that is this gentleman's discipline. Other people have word count things they do every day. But and some people are like, I just make my way through the day, and when ideas come, they come, and then I just grab them. And one guy's like, my wife, I could be just watching TV, watching baseball, or playing with my kid, and my wife's like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be working. And he's like, well, I am. This is all the ideas and everything I do come out of a relaxed state, come out of doing the mundane, come out of doing nothing, come out of everyday tasks, come out of scrolling through news or whatever the case. And so on the whole, most of these writers do have a discipline or come from a very strong disciplinary background. The guy who was just fluffing around at home shares how he was a sports and editorial writer and would have to write, like 3 articles a day for years. And so they have this writing muscle that they exercise. They have this writing capacity to go, all right, I'm going to punch out these words. And after years of doing that, of course, they build the ability to think and to write or to edit these particular in a particular way, and they know that they can come to the keyboard or the pen and paper and achieve that. So how do I write? Poetry has been really interesting. The Wrestle, which was my first book and has been kind of the most popular volume, and it's the largest solo volume that I did. I did the one after that, which was smaller, and then the others I did as anthologies as part of the Poetry Chapel. So altogether they'd make a big other second solo collection, but the Wrestle was the first, and I was really green. It's interesting because even in hearing a lot of these writers, say fictional writers, if they're asked how, what are the rules for writing, they're like, you have to have read a lot. Like, don't go trying to write into a genre unless you have, read 20 books in that genre. And at the same time, someone like Dan Brown, who wrote the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons and all this in kind of a literary fiction or, historical fiction kind of a way, apparently he hardly read any fiction at all. He was not a big fan of it, yet he knew that to get his message across, he was going to have to write fictionally. And so you hear about these people breaking standard rules. So for me, with the Wrestle, I hardly read any poetry. All I had done is come across who remains my favorite poet today, David White, on an interview on Being, and he recited and shared poetry, and something in me lit up, and I was like, aha, that is the language that my soul has been looking for to communicate what it's been going through, thinking, feeling, and it needs to squeeze out. And I then was like, I just started writing. I listened to him and read some of his stuff. Same with Mary Oliver, both free form, both used some shorter sort of sentences, and really didn't know a lot about poetry. But having been a singer or a musician for years too, I had a good sense of cadence and rhythm, and so I mimicked some of David White's writing style, the shorter words, like just beyond yourself, it's where you need to be, half a step into self-forgetting, and the rest made up by what you'll meet. I am on a busy road, apologies. I got that rhythm, and I started to just think and write in a very similar way. Mary Oliver had the same. One of my favorite poems by Mary Oliver is Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees through the desert for 100 miles repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear blue pebbles of rain, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's this style and this rhythm and this cadence. And so I tapped into that, and that's what I was able to write out of. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And 18 months later, the book was where it was. And I think I've talked about this. For a poetry book, you're lucky to sell 100 copies. I sold thousands of The Wrestle. It just hit the right spot in the right time. I had wonderful people like Paul Young and Brad Jerzak and others who were happy to promote the book, particularly William Paul Young, who wrote The Shack, promoted it, read about it, was the one who encouraged me to publish it. And so I was fortunate with that. Coming out in COVID, people were morose and wondering what life was like, and poetry seemed to be the language that got a lot of people through those difficult circumstances. So I would write a lot of that stuff as it came up, ad hoc. And poetry, you can really build a collection, and there doesn't have to be a great sense of continuity within it. There can be themes, but the thing with a poetry collection is much like a music album in some ways. Sure, you're going to use a similar production. Sure, it may look similar on the paper. You're going to use the same font, have a particular style that you've used for all the songs, but they can all be different length, involve some different instruments, a different feel, have different lyrics, be themed differently. And so a poetry collection is similar. No one's really looking for continuity of a story. But of course, in fiction and non-fiction, you've got to take somebody on a journey from the first page to the last page, or at least chapter by chapter, be carefully pulling somebody through a journey forward, like in Descent to Everything. For half the first book kind of outlines the problem, talks about capacity, talks about some of the solutions, talks about where we've been and what the gap is and where we need to go in eldering. And then the last half of it are my 5 suggestions on the things that we should decenter in order to be effective and authentic elders in community. So here's I'm just going to cross the road here. It is Sunday morning at about 5:30, so 6:30 Sunday morning, I'd say. So it's pretty quiet, thankfully, on this busy road. Yes, so you're taking people on the journey, walking them through. So the process for writing both is quite different. Now, writing a book and then having it reach a market and selling are all very different things. Even this morning, I saw a little thumbnail on Amazon Books. I was looking something up, an idea popped into my head. I'm thinking, I wonder if people have written books about that. And a strange looking cover came up, obviously AI sort of driven fantasy, crap font. Somebody's put 200 pages, maybe, I don't know, 50,000 words into this novel, and I clicked through, and this young guy who you read has done a degree in creative writing or something, average kind of profile pic, just all awful. And has written and published 10 books. They could be phenomenal. But just the presentation was poor. His bio was poor. His picture was. And I just got the sense that here's this young man who has this niche and loves this particular area. And out of all his 10 books, only one of them, just one, had a star rating, and I think it was 5 stars. And all the rest were just out there. And this is what we're contending with now with self-publishing. Now, I self-publish my books, but I'm sure this person, as much as these books might be great, has no marketing behind it. In fact, we talked about Dan Brown before. I heard on the How I Write podcast that when he had, because Angels and Demons, I think, was written before the Da Vinci Code, but the editor, the company had got a new editor and assigned him a new editor before when he had done the Da Vinci Code. And that editor put a lot of time and effort around marketing and getting this book out to market, and they attribute a lot of its success to the marketing of the book. And this is just a reality. We live in a very, what people call today, an attention economy. And what a lot of online companies want to do, of course, whether you talk about Facebook, Instagram, Google, ChatGPT is going to go this way. If there's advertising baked into these platforms, which there definitely is, and that is their main source of revenue, Facebook is not a social media company. It's an advertising company. Instagram is an advertising company, and it draws content for free from you and I, and then it makes its millions through advertising. Just running across another road. They are advertising companies, and it's really, really important, I think, for us to realize that if you've got a product or a service, whether it be a book or something else, you have to know that these companies are advertising companies, and so you have to pay to play now. If you want eyes on your product, on your post, putting some money behind it is what you're going to need to do. I think, if I count my Instagram, Facebook personal page and Facebook fan page, now I know that there's some doubling up here between both, but I think I have about 20,000 people across all three. I can put a post up and get 18, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 likes. If I put $5 behind that a day for 5 days, that thing is going to get hundreds and hundreds. It is going to literally turn up before thousands and thousands more eyes. So Decenter Everything, the book I wrote 6 months ago, it's still ranked in the top 100 of around 4 categories for its Kindle version in Australia and the US. I think it's number 40 in developmental psychology on Amazon Australia, in aging, in I think about 4 categories. I looked at them yesterday. But it stays in the ranks because it keeps selling, and the reason it keeps selling is 2 reasons. A, it is a good book, and I know that because people have told me. And there are people slowly discovering it and telling their friends, or churches are buying 5 or 10 copies to give to their elders or people in there. Or I know people who will love a book and will go buy 5 copies to give away and tell friends and people they mentor and influence in their life, you've got to read this book. So that's one thing. The other thing is I do advertise that book. Maybe once a month, I'll spend $20 or $30, maybe $40, $50, and put it out there and put a post up on Facebook and advertise it and drive sales and interest towards the Amazon or my own page and sell copies of it there. Morning. So that is how it stays in the ranks. And I can tell you it is definitely a correlation between the money I spend, even if it's $5 a day for 7, 8, 10 days. I can see the sales increase on Amazon and Ingram Spark, the distribution companies that sell the book. And there's a correlation. And I usually don't go backwards. I'm only forward a few dollars, but the copies of the books are getting out there and it's staying in the ranks. And the message as part of the book, which is of deep importance to me, I know is getting out into the world. So you have to advertise. Now, occasionally there are exceptionally good, outstanding books that make their way into people's lives. And if you hear William Paul Young talk about the book The Shack and how it just went gangbusters and how it was, why it came into the world and how it was birthed and how they were selling cartons and cartons of time they were going to jails, they were going to churches, they were going to home groups. The people were so touched by this book, it as this sort of self-published thing out of a shed. He said it was like selling contraband. You'd pull up and you'd unload a couple of cases of books at a car park somewhere. And by then it was getting so popular, bookshops wanted to stock it. Now, that is a unicorn moment and rarely happens. And I'm glad it happened to Paul Young because he's the most wonderful guy, and it was a story of brokenness and it changed his life. And yeah, it was made into a movie. All the things that was deserving of that story and the story of that book. If you hear it all, it's miraculous, end on end. It's beautiful. And yeah, it sold 23 million copies or something like that. It was a lot. So for me, when I write, there's also a sense that if I really value this book and the message it is, I want this thing to be out in the world and to start making a difference in people's lives. I want people to know about this. I've spent months and months and months writing this book, editing this book, getting it into the world. People deserve to know about it. In fact, if somebody was to hand me $5,000 to write a book, I'd spend at least 20% of that if you know, on the advertising of it. I would scrimp on some of the editing. I would scrimp on some of the book cover. There were some big things I would scrimp on. And even if it is the cover is not as perfect and the editing is not as perfect as I wish, what is important is that the book goes out into the world. And of course, there's a lot of ways you can market your book. But as far as bang for buck, particularly for new or emerging authors, you'll want to start playing with boosting, say, Facebook posts or other forms of advertising on Amazon or Google, Kindle, or I'm not really in the world of TikTok, maybe LinkedIn as well. But spend some time and money on these social media things. Just value your book enough to know that and see if you can get your money back. Morning. Hey buddies. Yeah. So I usually write in the morning. I will, if I can get up early, which most mornings I'm up by 5, and it's usually fresh. I'll grab a drink or not, and I will get behind my computer and write. So most of my writing, productive, good, solid writing, happens again somewhere between 6 and 10 a.m, maybe 5 and 10 a.m, and I can punch out a few thousand words in that time that are legible, readable, not perfect. I might need editing and re-editing and rewriting later, but certainly enough for me to go, okay, I know what I had to say, I said it, I can move on from here. Another thing that I do is, like I'm doing now, is while I'm going for a morning walk, I will record and transcribe thoughts and chapters audibly into my phone and have it transcribed through an app like Otter, or I'll use the ChatGPT OpenAI's Whisper thing and just get it translated. And that gives me a base of, while I've been walking, while I've been thinking, talking, verbalizing things, they can turn into chapters as well. And that can be a really good and effective way to move forward. Sometimes I could go for a half-hour walk and only get a few hundred words, like 200 words out, because I'm thinking slowly, I'm pausing, I'm like, no, scrap that, this is better. And I'm kind of talking and editing to myself, and I have to go back and edit that quite severely, but it captures a thought. What it also does is allow me to refine what I'm saying, and a lot of I think the key to a lot of good writing is to have it be concise speech. So you should most definitely be able to audibly, orally read out what you have written, and for it to make sense, and for it to be good and strong and concise in what you want. It's amazing how many times I can say, there's times I've published something very quickly to, say, Facebook or something, to a blog, and gone back to and try and read it out loud. It makes no sense. Punctuation's wrong, grammar's wrong, there's a strange word in there, it's not conceptually strong enough, there's not enough verbs in the sentence. Like, there are all these things that are and aren't working properly. So I will, while I walk and talk, one of the things it does force me to do too in the editing is to make sure, because it's coming from verbiage, is to make sure it translates back into something that can be spoken out and done so succinctly. And my goal is always to say a lot of things on paper better than I've said them while I'm walking and talking into my phone. But that has created for me a momentum and inertia, and I think that's probably one of the most important things to me over the years of writing, is this sense of inertia and momentum. Because on the other side of this too, I'm publishing academic articles, and some of those are 2,000 word long articles, complex articles with just a few references, and I'm just in negotiations with another one being published, comparing AI models and personas and things as doctoral confirmation research feedback. Anyway, stuff you're probably not interested in, my listeners, but that 7,000 words needs refining. I've co-authored it with some others, and all that takes time to write. And again, it's a different form of writing, but again, it's good practice. And my PhD thesis is 30,000 words now, and by the end of the year it'll have to be 80,000 words. Now, it sounds like a lot, and it is, and that needs to be refined and read a couple of times. But, years on, over nearly 2 decades of blogging, and 5 or 6 years of serious writing and publishing books, I just have a muscle. 2,000-3,000 words doesn't sound a lot. 10,000 doesn't sound extremely a lot. On our little getaway a couple of weeks ago, our writers retreat, Nat and I was able to put 10,000 words down. Now that'll be refined. It may actually end up a bit less, at 9,000. I'll cut some stuff out. It might end up more because I have seen gaps and have to elaborate upon it, which usually happens. And so that'll be more. So it's not a really overwhelming deal, but that's only because I've been doing this for a long time, and importantly, I enjoy it. if there is something I could do as a well-paid job with sort of, promise and tenure, I would just love to write. I would do that full time. I love writing, and I love publishing books. Unfortunately, it just does not pay the bills to be a full-time paid writer. You're either going to have to get employed as a copywriter or ghostwriter, or you are just going to have to cut some really lucky breaks with your own books and material, or as some people have done, just start pumping good quality books out, maybe even a couple a year over the years, and just start accumulating an underlying income and put money into advertising and really treat your writing as a business, and hopefully and I just think, as much as advertising and everything that I've talked about plays a part of it, to really make something of it, you need to have some real luck behind you. There has to be one, maybe two books that just puts you in the public eye and helps you sell your other books, because this is what happens, right? So since the last book came out in July, I've sold a stack of copies of my poetry that were otherwise not selling. I wasn't advertising them, but people find my poetry in my new book, and then they're like, yes, I like this guy, I'm going to get some of his other books, or while I'm buying this book, I might as well spend another $20 and get the second one. And so there's this upsell and cross-sell thing. You just slowly build that up. I know people that have written, that are exceptional writers, that have got 20 books in publication and circulation, some with traditional publishers, some self-published, and they say, look, my books would make me, as far as royalties and income goes, maybe $20,000 a year. Now, that's not nothing, but in 2025, that's not paying the rent anywhere. So yet it's still something I like and enjoy, and if I was granted the opportunity to do it, I would like to do it all day. I just really like writing. Now, lucky for me, in academia, when I move through my PhD in the next 18 months and get all that ticked off, there are roles that do involve quite a lot of writing, reading and writing, but particularly writing. And I guess of all the trades, it can pay well. It does pay well, and it also allows you to hone your writing craft as well. So that's how I write. There's some stuff around why writing. I am going to, for as long as my body and brain allows me to, I'd like to keep writing. I would like to do a novel in the next year or two. I have something, a concept and idea and framework and characters that I've had as a little side project the last month. I've just been chilling out on holidays, wondering how I can bring some of my world together. How does somebody who works in emotional and soul care, and then is also a researcher in small business, bring these two worlds together? And so I've got the framework for a fictional book and this might just be a total dump or a total waste, or it could just be something that people are looking for. There's just really not many books in the market in the fictional area that have the main characters and protagonists, as it were, the heroes of this journey, as small business owner-operators, and the focus in the journey is one that is very real in small business, and that is that it is a soul journey as much as it is a financial and vocational one. That small business, running and operating a small business, whether you're or I'm going to call it micro business, whether you're self-employed or just have a small number of employees, it is always deeply personal, deeply local, deeply emotional, deeply confrontational, and I think there's just really not a lot of literature, fiction and non-fiction, that looks at this huge chunk of the population that are largely self-employed or run micro or small businesses. There really isn't. There are business fables and business books and management books out your arse, out the wazoo, which are all focused on an employer or a manager at an organization owned by someone else. It's all large corporate, industrial, large business, institutional businesses and organizations. There is an abundance of literature and research in that space. And I know because my PhD is around small business. And there's just really so much lacking. Yet in Australia, small businesses, for example, make up a third of our GDP. Most of those small businesses are under 20 employees, less than $5 million a year, and most of those are just one or two people, mum and dad shops. They make our world go around. The same as in Europe, the same as in the US, the same as in the UK. They may not make up all the same amount of GDP, but in Australia and the UK and US alone, there is something like, I was trying to remember the figures, around 50 million micro and small business owner-operators that are registered in the business. It's hard to tell in the States because of the way that they do their demographics and their stats, but very conservative numbers, around 50 million, which is more than the Australian population. And there's nothing to serve these people, by and large, particularly in what we call business parables, which is a genre, like if you've read the word, there's a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. There's another one called Fish, about the San Francisco fish market. Who Moved My Cheese? I mean, there's just all these business parables, but they're not really focused or thinking about small business. There are other fictional business fable kind of novels which are good, like Goal and some others, again, all focused on the broader, larger business market. So I'd like to dip my toe into that water, bring some of my worlds together and see what appears. I've just told you more than I thought I would, but anyway, it's good to talk about it to the small number of listeners of this podcast. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening, and I appreciate all the little feedbacks and messages I get from you out there from time to time. Bless you. Have a wonderful week.